Did you, in fact, say on April 23rd there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors? Just before we get into the details, is that an accurate quote?
No scientific reviewer was cut as a part of the reduction in force.
But you said there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors. Didn't you say that?
My understanding was that there were no cuts to the scientific staff, but specifically the scientific reviewers is what I was referring to.
But you said there were, it's a very straightforward question. You said there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors, correct?
Scientific reviewers is what I was referring to. That's the vast majority of scientists there. Jim Jones is an economist.
5 days before you had said there were no cuts to scientists. You said that, right?
I was referring to scientific reviewers. But
scientists had been fired, correct?
There have been research scientists in some labs that have been doing some research. Some of that research is good, some of it is not good, and so there have been no cuts to scientific reviewers.
And in fact, scientists who study the safety of infant formula had been fired.
Parents across the country are worried about what's in their baby's formula. In a heated Senate hearing, Senator Jon Ossoff pressed FDA official Dr. Marty Makary on whether scientists responsible for infant formula safety were fired, after public assurances that no cuts had taken place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Dr. Makary, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for joining us. I was pleased to see that the Secretary has made the safety of infant formula a priority for the department. Is that correct?
That's right, and the FDA will be convening the world experts on infant formula June 4th, and we're going to be having a robust discussion because parents want infant formula options with a better supply chain and without added sugar and seed oils.
Did you see a recent Consumer Reports study which found that of 41 tested infant formulas, more than 30 were found to have potentially dangerous levels of lead?
Yeah, heavy metals in infant formula is something that's getting a lot of attention, as it should, and so that is part of Operation Stork Speed to take a hard look at that, and it is one of the priorities of our infant formula roundtable at the FDA on June 4th.
And it's the Human Foods division of your agency responsible for infant formula safety, at least in large part, yes?
Yes.
Trying to make sure I understand some of the relevant personnel decisions given the concern that families in Georgia have about the safety of infant formula, the safety of the food supply. James Jones, the Deputy Commissioner for Human Foods, submitted a resignation letter February 17th, included the quotes, quote, "The indiscriminate firing of 89 staff in the Human Foods program is beyond short-sighted. The foods program staff at FDA is the envy of the world in its technical, professional, and ethical standards." It goes on, "The employees fired this past weekend are the most recent hires and generally come to federal service with the most recent education and represent the future of the agency. They included staff with highly technical expertise in nutrition, infant formula, food safety response, and even 10 chemical safety staff hired to review potentially unsafe ingredients in our food supply." That was February 17th. You were asked on April 17th whether any of the personnel reductions had included personnel responsible for food safety or infant formula safety. You said, quote, "There were no cuts to scientists or reviewers or inspectors, absolutely none." You were asked on April 23rd on CNN and said, quote, "Again, there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors." But then just 2 days later, an HHS spokesperson confirmed that, in fact, scientists had been fired and that you were scrambling to rehire them. Is that, did you, in fact, say on April 23rd there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors? Just before we get into the details, is that an accurate quote?
No scientific reviewer was cut as a part of the reduction in force.
But you said there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors. Didn't you say that?
My understanding was that there were no cuts to the scientific staff, but specifically the scientific reviewers is what I was referring to.
But you said there were, it's a very straightforward question. You said there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors, correct?
Scientific reviewers is what I was referring to. That's the vast majority of scientists there. Jim Jones is an economist.
5 days before you had said there were no cuts to scientists. You said that, right?
I was referring to scientific reviewers. But
scientists had been fired, correct?
There have been research scientists in some labs that have been doing some research. Some of that research is good, some of it is not good, and so there have been no cuts to scientific reviewers.
And in fact, scientists who study the safety of infant formula had been fired, correct?
I'm not aware of any scientist who studies infant formula that has.
Here's the reporting in the New York Times, which says the HHS spokesman said those employees called back had been inadvertently fired, and the decision to rehire specialists on outbreaks of food-related illnesses and those who study the safety of products like infant formula. So is this reporting accurate? Had, in fact, scientists who study outbreaks of food-related illnesses and the safety of infant formula been fired?
The reason it's not accurate, Senator, is that people were not fired. They were scheduled for the reduction in force. And that was before I got there. When I got there, we did an assessment. And so some of those individuals out of the 19,000 were restored. Jim Jones was an economist, and he was upset about the Doge cuts, so he self-doged. He was not fired. I wish he would have stayed.
Have all scientists responsible for food safety and infant formula safety been rehired or reinstated?
Look, we have not reduced in force the scientific review staff. I know where you're going with this. We're not allowed.
I'm trying to get clarity on your statement.
Person.
You said there were no cuts to scientists, and then the HHS spokesperson said, actually, there were cuts to scientists, and now we're trying to rehire them. I mean, so it gives the impression you're not sure about the personnel actions ongoing in your own agency, and that's
again, no one was
from your testimony today.
No one was cut in the reduction of force. They were scheduled for the reduction in the future. Down the road, it has not happened yet. So the people scheduled to be cut, we did a review and found some research scientists. When I made those statements, it was very specific. I was very clear. We're talking about scientific reviewers because the trains have to run on time. And if you're concerned about
My time is up. But you were very specific. You said there were no cuts to scientists. And then 5 days later, there were no cuts to scientists. Those are your direct quotes. There were no cuts to scientists, but there were cuts to scientists.
No, there were no cuts to scientists because people were scheduled for the reduction in force down in the future, and the people scheduled were reevaluated, and we restored a couple research scientists, and I was referring not only to them, but to
how many?
To the scientific reviewers.
How many scientists responsible for preventing outbreaks of food-related illnesses and the safety of infant formula have been restored or reinstated?
There were no scientists that were in charge of preventing outbreaks that were part of the reduction.
I didn't say in charge.
But I mean, this is the problem in government. Somebody has a fancy-sounding name like infant formula safety, and no one can ever touch them, even if they're not doing their job.
Okay, I tell you what, how about this?
Redundant.
I'll send you, so that you can get accurate information to the committee, I'll send you some very detailed questions about this, and you'll respond in full, yes?
Yes, just keep in mind the agency was half its size in 2007. We didn't have outbreaks and rampages and food outbreaks.
Well, we had a huge infant formula safety crisis in this country just a few years ago. Do you recall that?
That was because of several problems, including...
Yeah, but so you will respond in full to the questions that I send you.
I'm always happy to respond in full.
Thank you so much,
Senator.
Dr. Makary. Thank you.
In a Senate oversight hearing, Senator Jon Ossoff pressed Dr. Marty Makary, a top FDA official, on the safety of infant formula and recent staffing changes inside the agency. The hearing came amid growing parental concerns after a Consumer Reports investigation found that several infant formula products contained potentially dangerous levels of lead and other heavy metals. Ossoff pointed to these findings as proof that federal regulators must ensure stronger protections for babies and families. Dr. Makary confirmed that the FDA's Human Foods Division is responsible for infant formula safety and revealed that the agency will convene a global expert roundtable on June 4. This meeting will focus on supply chain reliability, nutritional concerns like added sugars and seed oils, and the ongoing issue of heavy metals in baby food. But the heart of the clash centered on staff cuts. Ossoff repeatedly challenged Dr. Makary over apparent contradictions between his past public statements and later reports. In February, senior FDA official James Jones resigned, warning in his letter that staff with expertise in food safety and chemical safety were being let go. Ossoff highlighted that, on multiple occasions in April, Dr. Makary publicly stated there were no cuts to scientists or inspectors. Days later, however, an HHS spokesperson confirmed that some scientists, including those studying infant formula safety, had indeed been terminated or were in the process of being laid off. When pressed, Dr. Makary defended his earlier comments by narrowing his definition. He insisted he was referring specifically to scientific reviewers, the staff responsible for regulatory approval, rather than research scientists, some of whom had been scheduled for reductions in force. According to Makary, several of those individuals were later restored to their positions after review. Ossoff was unsatisfied, arguing that the FDA's shifting explanations create confusion and undermine public confidence at a time when infant formula safety remains a national concern. He underscored that families deserve direct, unambiguous answers about whether the experts tasked with protecting babies' health are still on the job. The exchange ended with Ossoff demanding a full written response from Dr. Makary, including detailed answers about staffing, oversight, and formula safety measures. Makary agreed but continued to defend his position, maintaining that no core scientific review staff had been cut and that FDA operations remained stable. The back and forth captured the stakes of the issue. At its core, this is about whether the FDA has the personnel, resources, and transparency needed to safeguard the food supply, especially for infants. With the upcoming June roundtable, parents, lawmakers, and health experts will be watching closely for follow-through. Senator Jon Ossoff questioned FDA official Dr. Marty Makary in a heated Senate hearing about the safety of infant formula and whether scientists responsible for food safety had been fired. The exchange raised concerns about lead in baby formula, staff reductions at FDA, and public trust in food safety oversight.